Welcome to the Thunder and Lightning Show. We've done a lot of talking about how Holy Communion is irreverently received. Bishops have tried to ban communion on the tongue. And we're going to switch gears a little bit and try to talk about, well, we're not going to try, we're going to talk about reverent reception of Holy Communion and traditional reception of Holy Communion and just different ways people receive communion throughout church history. So I want to turn it over to Ryan and, take it away.
Thanks, John. So this came about because we, as you had mentioned, we were talking about that some bishops have mandated this communion in the hand, which is sacrilegious, objectively sacrilegious, because particles go flying all over the place. Historically in the church, there have been a number of ways to receive Holy Communion in a reverent manner. Even presently, there are different ways reverently. Just take a look at the Byzantine East, and they have the Holy Communion with a spoon, which is not a communion in the hand. It's more or less a communion on the tongue, but it's used by means of a spoon. So you have the precious body and the precious blood is given to each communicant. Or maybe if it's a small child, then just the precious blood is given to them. But the problem here is not that the problem here is that the bad guys and some of these bad bishops want to mandate the communion in the hand under the auspices, they say, of preventing the transmission of the virus. But really it's because they're at war with tradition and reverence with the Eucharist. Because there's a million ways that you could minimize transmission of the virus and still have a reverent manner of reception of Holy Communion. So I wanted to go through those today and give you some examples of that. Now let's talk about the things that are what I would consider perhaps to be the most novel technique, and this is actually probably quite similar to the way that communion is received in the Old Mass right now. But okay, so let's say you can't have communion on the tongue or whatever for whatever reason because your bishop hates tradition or the Eucharist or whatever. So I prepared some props here. Let's pretend that this is a sacred host, and let's pretend that this is a paten. Okay, let's say it's even a consecrated paten, and maybe you have your own. I don't know, or maybe the parish has one or whatever. And now, if this is consecrated, if this is one of the vessels, you're not allowed to touch it. So you have to put on a glove. But let's pretend, or maybe I don't even need to touch it. The priest is touching it himself. Now the priest takes this sacred host and he puts it here on the paten, and then he goes like this. I've received Holy Communion in a reverent fashion, not in the hand and not in the tongue. Now this can be taken and purified and cleaned up properly, just like the priest would if he was, this is a paten that he receives communion off of. So there's one reverent technique. Of course, you would probably have the big plate here before I go and drop the thing in my mouth, or he does the dropping. This would catch any particles, so now you're doubly safe. So that's technique one. Now, technique two. Apparently this is what Bishop Schneider talked about historically, is that when you read, I think St. Cyprian or whoever that was talking about receiving this communion in the hand, apparently you would take this cloth, and you would hold it in your hands, and the priest would put the host on there, and then you would receive like this. Now, lest you think, crumbs are all over the place. Well, if you go to the Old Mass, the priest spends the entirety of the Mass. After the consecration, he has his big priest host, and it's just sitting here on the corporal, which is a cloth. So this contains all the crumbs, and he'll have the chalice here. Let's pretend this is the chalice. All right, this is really iced tea, but let's pretend it's the chalice. And it's all sitting there on the corporal, so he does the consecration, he sets it down, and then he genuflects. And then at some point in time, he takes this paten, and he this is after the Our Father. He would do this quite nicely. He would get the host onto this paten, and there's some mystical representation here that has to do with, apparently it has to do with the Jews who, after having the veil over them, they were hidden Christ was hidden from them in some way. Then they come back and become the basis of the church. Well, anyway, so let's go to technique number 2 here, and that's I take this corporal. Let's pretend you're a priest. Here is your sacred hosts, and I have this cloth here. Maybe this is just setting on the communion rail. Let me move this Bible. I'm at the communion rail. Now you place one of these hosts there with your fingers. Just set it down there. And then I reverently receive a la this method. So I received the Holy Communion reverently. If there's any crumbs, they're right here on this corporal, which is taken and handled the correct way so that the crumbs aren't lost. And nobody received communion in the hand sacrilegiously.
Now, does everyone use the same corporal under that method?
I think you would probably want to have each person with their own corporal, or maybe each family would have their own. Let me wash down this fake Holy Communion.
And that would be probably. I mean, I don't see any problems with that. Like, I don't see how that would be.
I don't either, but because that's your Catholic,
Okay.
and the problem is these bishops who are against reverent reception of Holy Communion, they're not Catholic. Now let's talk about the communion via straw. And the first time, this was back when I went to the Novus Ordo and I started to read the general instructions of the Roman Missal, the GIRM, G-I-R-M, which is the rubrics for the new Mass. And I got to paragraph number 245. This is about ways to receive the precious blood. Number 245 in the general instruction of the new Roman Missal. The blood of the Lord may be consumed either by drinking from the chalice directly, or by intinction, or by means of a tube or spoon. So this is allowed according to the rubrics of the church. And actually this is, as I mentioned, the spoon is traditional because the Byzantines do that. But the straw is actually a traditional method too. I did some research into this, and that the straw really had only been preserved in the papal Mass. That the Pope received, I believe he received communion at his chair, at his throne, and a deacon brought him the chalice, and there was another server who brought this straw. It's not like this thing, which is some little coffee stir deal. It was a beautiful golden straw that they would bring out in this case, and they would give the straw to the Pope, and he would put it into the precious blood, and then he would take a sip. And then the deacon would take this thing, and I think there was probably a rite of purification, but then this straw would be cleansed with, it would go into some wine, and then there'd be another glass of water, and you would purify it like that. Now, okay, some people are going to say, oh, everybody's drinking out of the same chalice, oh, it's contaminated or whatever. Maybe, I don't know, but there's antiseptic properties of wine, and the precious blood has the accidents of wine, and therefore it would have the antiseptic properties, and so maybe this is not as dangerous as you think it is. If everybody has their own golden straw, which then don't get thrown away, okay? We're not like some of these ridiculous people, fake bad Byzantines who are using, or Orthodox who are using these plastic spoons to receive Holy Communion. And then what are you doing? It's like totally irreverent, sacrilegious. But if everybody has their own silver straw, then they can drink the precious blood from the chalice. I mean, again, this is another safe traditional way, perhaps. It's something to consider. But again, if you're a bad bishop and you're like, you must receive this communion in the hand, you must stick out your hands, it's an assault.
Put your hands out.
Yeah, put your hands out. That's what the bad guys are doing. So anyway, I just wanted to do a quick show on the reverent methods to receive Holy Communion, not on the tongue, which all these were. They're all reverent, they're not on the tongue. And you'll probably never see them because you're either going to receive communion on the tongue the normal way, or you belong to a terrible diocese where the bishop has mandated the hand communion. But maybe if a priest watches this or a bishop, maybe they'll start thinking about the possibilities. I mean, as I pointed out, even in the new Mass, there's some of these possibilities here.
Yeah, and one interesting thing I wanted to point out with the Byzantines, whenever the priest is distributing communion from the spoon, the priest is not even touching the sacred host or the precious blood. So that's, I think that's interesting, and that's the same sort of method as the straw, like where the priest isn't touching either the body and blood of Christ. So,
oh, I see. But yeah,
Yeah.
he uses an instrument. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so that's what.
There's another technique. It's a tool. Father Zulsdorf pointed out that there's like these tongs, and they're the reverse tongs that by pressing you release rather than by pressing you hold. But anyway, they're like these press and release tongs that, let's pretend these are the tongs, and let's pretend this is a sacred host. So, and they're pretty long, so therefore, here comes the priest with his host, and I receive reverently on the tongue. Now he takes these tongs, these are the tongs, and then he would purify these in some substance here, probably like unconsecrated wine, and then water, and then he could probably reuse those tongs over again. Again, that's something that existed in history.
And that's different than the distributing by tweezers. I've seen a photo of a priest distributing communion with tweezers.
In the hand or what?
Yes.
What's the point? I mean, really, again? It's not plutonium, it's the Holy Eucharist. This virus is not that dangerous.
All right. Well, Ryan, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I don't have any closing thoughts other than receive communion worthily and in a reverent manner. And that's all I have to say.
This probably isn't going to go away for a while. We'll probably be talking about this in a year. Who knows? Unfortunately.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we talked about this whole. It's been like 3 months since we did our first show about the virus, and I know. Go back and watch our first shows from early March about this virus, and the things that we said have proven to be exactly right. It was ridiculous. You have seen it. They told us you can't go to Mass. Churches are too dangerous. But yet you could go to Lowe's or Home Depot or whatever, or Walmart. But nothing's changed. So the virus is still there, but all of a sudden now we're allowed to go to Mass. It's the same virus, but now all of a sudden, after Easter, the virus is not dangerous. You can go to Mass as long as you wear a mask. Before that time, you would have died if you would have attended Mass. But, go watch our old videos. We already analyzed this mania for the virus, and I don't know. It seems like the only people that believe in this virus anymore are Democrat politicians and Catholic bishops, which nowadays are basically the same thing. Just one of them wears like a purple or a black dress. That would be the Catholic bishop. I don't know, maybe some of the Democrat politicians, if they're women, maybe they wear the black dress or the purple dress or whatever. I don't know, but there's not that much difference between them anymore.
Yeah, and I talk a lot about government funding. That's so true. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks, John.
Everyone, receive communion traditionally, and if you're not able to, try to go underground and do something like that.
Yeah.
And watch our old videos. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.
Take care.